Hey friend, before we start tonight, just one small thing. This channel only works because people like you decide quietly. On your own, it's worth a small nod. A like costs nothing. Less time than this sentence took. If you've been listening a while without pressing subscribe, no pressure tonight either. It just helps in an ordinary human way. It tells me someone out there was glad this was playing tonight. That's the whole ask. Close your eyes for a moment and allow yourself to drift backward nearly 2,000 years. The day has been long, warm, and filled with quiet labor. The brilliant Mediterranean sun, which only hours ago shone brightly upon marble temples and crowded marketplaces, has begun its slow descent toward the western hills. The light softens with each passing moment, turning from bright gold into shades of amber, rose, and pale lavender. Shadows stretch longer across the stone streets, while the city's endless bustle gradually gives way to something gentler. This is ancient Rome. Not the Rome of triumphal parades, fierce gladiators, or powerful emperors. Instead, tonight you will experience a quieter Rome, the Rome known best by ordinary women whose names have long disappeared from history. Women who lived simple lives, cared for their families, managed their homes, and welcomed each evening with familiar routines repeated thousands of times throughout their lives. Imagine yourself standing on one of Rome's gently sloping streets. The stones beneath your feet have been worn smooth by generations of sandals, carts, horses, and wagons. Some stones glisten faintly after being sprinkled with water to settle the day's dust. Others are warm from hours beneath the summer sun. Above you, the sky begins its evening transformation. The clouds catch brilliant streaks of orange and crimson, while the highest parts of the heavens slowly deepen into soft blue. Swallows dart gracefully overhead, chasing their final insects before darkness arrives. Their tiny wings cut silently through the cooling air. A pleasant breeze drifts through the narrow streets. It carries many familiar scents. Fresh bread still warm from neighborhood ovens. Olive oil. Wood smoke curling upward from household kitchens. Crushed rosemary. Bay leaves. Figs ripening in nearby gardens. The salty hint of the distant sea. Together, these smells create the unmistakable fragrance of an ordinary Roman evening. The city's great forum, the busy heart of Rome, is slowly emptying. Only an hour ago it echoed with merchants calling to customers, lawyers arguing important cases, politicians giving speeches, and citizens discussing everything from grain prices to military victories. Now the voices become fewer. Shopkeepers begin closing wooden shutters over their stalls. A cloth merchant carefully folds brightly colored fabrics, smoothing each piece before placing it into large cedar chests. Nearby, a pottery seller stacks bowls, cups, and jugs one atop another with practiced hands. Every piece has been shaped from local clay and fired in smoky kilns outside the city walls. A fruit seller counts the figs remaining in his basket. They are softer now after spending the day beneath the warm sun. Whatever remains unsold will become tomorrow's breakfast or perhaps be dried for later use. Metal workers extinguish glowing furnaces. Blacksmiths wipe soot from their faces. Carpenters sweep wood shavings into neat piles. The day's work is nearly complete. Even the donkeys seem to understand. Slowly they plod toward home, their saddlebags lighter than they were that morning. Their hooves strike the stone streets with gentle rhythmic sounds that echo softly between tall buildings, not a hurried sound. There is no reason to rush now. The day is ending. Throughout the city, women begin making their own journeys home. Some have spent the afternoon shopping for the evening meal. Others have visited neighbors or family members. Some worked beside husbands in small shops. Others spent hours spinning wool, weaving cloth, baking bread, or tending gardens. Every woman carries something. A woven basket hangs from one arm. Inside may be onions, fresh herbs, a handful of olives, perhaps a small round loaf of bread still wrapped in linen. Another carries a clay jar filled with olive oil, held carefully against her shoulder. Its smooth surface reflects the fading sunlight. A younger woman balances two water jars suspended from a wooden yoke resting comfortably across her shoulders. She has made this journey countless times before. Her steps remain steady despite the weight. Nearby, an elderly woman walks more slowly. Her gray hair is neatly gathered beneath a simple linen covering. Her hands, roughened by decades of work, gently hold a small basket containing lentils and fresh garlic. She pauses briefly, not because she is tired, simply because she wishes to enjoy the evening breeze before returning home. The air is cooler now, much kinder than the afternoon heat. Children begin appearing in greater numbers. Their games, which filled open spaces throughout the afternoon, slowly come to an end. A small group rolls wooden hoops one final time before laughing and heading home. Another group chases one another around a public fountain. Their mothers call gently from nearby doorways. It is time. The children know exactly what those words mean. Soon lamps will be lit. Supper will be served. The streets will grow dark. One by one they leave their games behind. Pigeons flutter upward from rooftops before settling again upon warm terracotta tiles. Sparrows disappear into ivy climbing ancient walls. Even the city's countless cats begin stretching lazily after sleeping away the hottest hours of the afternoon. Some wander toward kitchens, already knowing where scraps of fish or bits of bread might soon appear. A friendly dog waits patiently outside a bakery. Its tail moves slowly as the baker emerges carrying a small crust saved from the day's final loaf. The dog accepts the gift gratefully. No words are exchanged. Neither expects them. This simple ritual has likely happened many evenings before. Far above, thin trails of smoke rise from hundreds of rooftops. Each column marks another household preparing the evening meal. Some fires burn oak. Others use olive wood. Still others burn dried vines left after the grape harvest. Each type of wood gives the air a slightly different fragrance. As they mingle together, the city seems wrapped in a comforting blanket of familiar scents. Across Rome, household servants hurry to complete their final outdoor tasks before darkness falls. Laundry hanging on ropes is gathered while it still holds the warmth of the afternoon sun. Clay water jars are filled for the night. Garden gates are closed. Small chickens are gently guided into wooden coops. Goats return to simple shelters. The city itself seems to breathe more slowly. Its heartbeat becomes calmer. The hurried footsteps of morning have disappeared. The loud conversations of midday soften into quiet greetings shared between neighbors passing one another on narrow streets. An old woman sits outside her doorway spinning wool. The spindle turns slowly between practiced fingers. She does not rush. There is comfort in familiar work. Her granddaughter sits beside her, watching closely, hoping someday to master the same skill. Neither speaks very much. They do not need to. The gentle turning of the spindle says enough. Not far away, two sisters carry freshly baked bread home together. They speak quietly about tomorrow's market, about an elderly aunt who has not been feeling well, about whether the fig tree in their courtyard will produce enough fruit this season. Simple conversations, ordinary concerns, the kinds of thoughts that have filled evenings for countless generations. As the sun sinks lower still, golden light catches the marble columns of distant temples. For a few magical moments, they seem almost to glow from within. The white stone reflects warm colors across nearby streets. Even humble buildings appear beautiful beneath the evening sky. Temple priests complete the day's final rituals. Heavy bronze doors begin closing. The smell of incense drifts softly into the surrounding air. A few worshippers pause briefly to whisper quiet prayers before returning home to their own families. No grand ceremonies, no great crowds, only peaceful endings. The city grows quieter with every passing minute. A merchant pulls shut the last wooden shutter of his shop. The sound echoes gently through the nearly empty street. A horse drinks from a public trough. Somewhere nearby, someone begins playing a simple melody on a wooden flute. The tune drifts through open windows before disappearing into the evening air. It is neither joyful nor sad. simply peaceful, exactly suited to the hour. Now the first stars begin appearing overhead. At first only one, then another. Soon several tiny points of light shine above the rooftops, unnoticed by many who remain busy finishing their final tasks. But an elderly woman walking slowly home with her basket notices them. She smiles quietly. Tomorrow will come, as it always has, as it always will. The last rays of sunlight slip behind the western horizon. The brilliant colors slowly fade into deeper blues. Rome prepares for another ordinary night. Oil lamps will soon replace the sun. Families will gather around simple tables. Stories will be shared. Bread will be broken. Children will grow sleepy. And the women of ancient Rome, whose quiet work has shaped every hour of the day, will begin the gentle rituals that carry their households peacefully into the night. But before the first lamp is lit, before the first evening meal is served, there is one final moment of stillness. The city pauses. The breeze cools. The swallows disappear. The smoke rises straight into the darkening sky. The warmth of the day was beginning to fade. As the last golden light slipped across the rooftops of Rome, women throughout the city turned their steps toward home. The busiest hours of the marketplace had passed, and the cheerful noise of bargaining slowly softened into scattered conversations. Merchants carefully packed away baskets of vegetables, jars of olive oil, folded cloth, and small bronze tools, preparing for another day when the sun would once again rise over the eternal city. For many Roman women, the evening journey home was a familiar ritual repeated countless times throughout their lives. It was neither hurried nor especially slow. It was simply part of the rhythm of the day, as ordinary and dependable as the setting sun itself. Imagine walking beside one of these women. Her sandals tapped softly against the worn stone streets, polished smooth after centuries of footsteps. In one arm she carries a woven basket filled with fresh bread, onions, a handful of figs, and perhaps a small wedge of goat cheese wrapped carefully in cloth. Around her, other women carry similar bundles. Some have small children walking beside them, holding tightly to their mother's tunics. Others balance clay jars or baskets upon their heads with remarkable ease, moving gracefully through the crowded streets. The evening air is cooler now. A gentle breeze flows between the narrow buildings, carrying with it the scent of warm stone, slowly releasing the heat it gathered during the afternoon. Somewhere nearby, someone is baking the final loaves of bread for the day. The comforting smell drifts through the streets, mixing with the fragrance of rosemary, thyme, olive oil, and with smoke rising lazily from countless kitchens. Above, swallows dart across the fading sky, catching the last insects before darkness settles over the city. The sky itself has become a painting of soft colors. Golden yellow melts into pale orange. Orange deepens into rose. Rose slowly gives way to gentle shades of violet. The first stars are beginning to appear. Rome is preparing for night. Not every woman returns to the same kind of home. Ancient Rome was a city of extraordinary contrast. Some families lived in magnificent villas decorated with colorful frescoes, marble columns, flowering gardens, and quiet courtyards filled with fountains. Wealthy women returned through beautifully carved wooden doors into spacious homes where servants had already begun preparing the evening meal. Others climbed several flights of narrow wooden stairs inside crowded apartment buildings known as insulae. These apartments were often small, noisy, and filled with large families sharing limited space. The higher the apartment, the more difficult the climb became, especially while carrying heavy baskets of food or water. Yet whether rich or poor, the simple act of coming home marked an important moment in every Roman woman's day. Outside, the city remained busy. Inside, another world was waiting. Imagine entering one of these homes. The heavy wooden door closes gently behind you. Almost immediately, the sounds of the busy street become softer. The laughter of children outside fades. The rumble of passing carts becomes distant. Inside there is a peaceful stillness. The air feels cooler. Stone walls help protect the home from the heat of the afternoon sun. Small windows allow fresh air to drift through while keeping the brightest sunlight outside. A woman places her basket upon a sturdy wooden table. One by one she removes its contents. Fresh bread, a bundle of herbs, several onions, dark olives glistening with oil, perhaps a handful of grapes if the season has been kind. Nothing is wasted. Every item has value. Food has required time, effort, and careful planning. Before beginning the evening meal, many women first turn their attention to the house itself. Even after a long day, there is always something that needs doing. A broom made from bundled twigs rests near the doorway. She sweeps away the dust carried inside by countless footsteps. Fine grains of dirt gather into neat little piles before being carried outside. The floor becomes cleaner once again. Simple, quiet, orderly. For Roman households, cleanliness was not only practical but also reflected pride in one's home. Even modest homes were often carefully maintained despite limited resources. Nearby, a clay water jar stands against the wall. She lifts its lid. There is still enough water for cooking and washing. That is good. Fetching water could require another journey to a public fountain, and evening was not always the easiest time for such work. She pours a little into a small basin. The cool water feels refreshing against tired hands. Dust from the marketplace disappears. The warmth of the day slowly leaves her skin. Sometimes she washes her face. Sometimes only her hands. Sometimes her feet as well, grateful to remove the dust collected from Rome's stone streets. As daylight fades further, another important task begins. The lamps. Without electricity, every household depends upon small oil lamps to push back the darkness. One by one she gathers them. They are simple objects made from clay or bronze, shaped carefully with a small opening for olive oil and a narrow spout where a linen wick rests. She pours fresh olive oil into each lamp. The familiar scent is gentle and comforting. Taking a small flame from the kitchen fire, she carefully lights the first wick. A tiny flame appears. Then another. And another. Soon the room glows with soft golden light. Unlike the bright electric lights we know today, these lamps cast gentle shadows across the walls. Everything seems quieter beneath their warm glow. The flickering light dances across painted pottery, across wooden furniture, across woven baskets hanging neatly from pegs, across the faces of family members arriving home. The house feels alive once more. If the family keeps animals, they too receive attention before night fully arrives. Perhaps a few chickens wander inside a small courtyard. They are gently encouraged into their enclosure. Fresh grain is scattered upon the ground. The birds settle for the evening. A loyal household dog circles twice before lying beside the doorway. His watch has already begun. Cats, valued throughout Rome for protecting food stores from mice, quietly slip through the shadows, beginning their own nightly patrols. Their movements are graceful and almost silent. The household gradually grows calmer. Every creature understands that evening has arrived. In wealthier homes, some responsibilities are shared among servants. Yet even there, the mistress of the house often oversees everything. She checks that supplies have been properly stored. She ensures lamps are safely placed. She gives quiet instructions regarding tomorrow's work. A successful Roman household depends upon careful organization. Nothing is left entirely to chance. Meanwhile, in more modest homes, every task belongs to the family itself. There are no servants. Every pair of hands is needed. Older daughters help prepare food. Young sons carry small bundles of firewood. Grandmothers mend clothing. Everyone contributes according to their ability. Work is shared. Not because tradition demands it alone, but because daily life depends upon cooperation. Outside, the city continues its gradual transformation. The bright marketplace now grows quiet. Shopkeepers lock heavy wooden shutters. Temple doors close after evening prayers. The distant sound of hammering fades as craftsmen finish their final repairs for the day. The streets become less crowded. Instead of merchants, neighbors now greet one another as they return home carrying baskets much like their own. Some pause briefly to exchange news. Others simply smile. Everyone understands that daylight is precious, and tomorrow's work will begin again soon enough. Inside the home, however, something peaceful begins to settle over the household. The hardest part of the day is ending. The evening meal has not yet begun. Children's laughter drifts softly through the rooms. The lamps burn steadily. The scent of fresh bread fills the air. Outside, the sky has become deep blue. The first bright stars now shine clearly above the rooftops of Rome. Another ordinary evening has arrived. Not remembered by historians. Not written into the speeches of senators. Not celebrated in grand monuments. Yet these quiet moments, returning home, lighting lamps, washing away the dust of the day, and preparing for another peaceful evening, formed the true heartbeat of Roman life. For thousands of women, on thousands of evenings, this simple routine repeated itself with comforting familiarity. And as darkness settled gently over the city, the home became the center of warmth, safety, and quiet belonging, ready for the shared meal and gentle conversations that would soon follow. The sun has now slipped below the rooftops of Rome, leaving behind a sky painted with gentle shades of amber, lavender, and fading blue. The day's heat slowly drifts away, replaced by a pleasant evening coolness that slips through open doorways and narrow windows. One by one, tiny oil lamps begin to glow inside homes across the city, their soft golden light dancing against white plaster walls. Now, let us quietly step inside one of these homes. It does not belong to a senator or a famous general. There are no marble halls filled with priceless statues or servants rushing from room to room. This is the home of an ordinary Roman family. It is comfortable, practical, and full of the familiar rhythms of everyday life. Here, history is not made by emperors or soldiers. Instead, it is shaped by the steady hands of women preparing another evening meal. The kitchen is small. Its walls are darkened from years of cooking over charcoal fires. Clay pots rest neatly upon wooden shelves. Woven baskets hold onions, garlic, and small bundles of herbs that hang upside down from ceiling beams, slowly drying in the warm air. Earthenware jars filled with olive oil, wine, and grain line one corner of the room. Everything has its place, arranged carefully through habit rather than decoration. The Roman woman enters quietly, carrying a woven basket she brought home from the market earlier in the afternoon. Inside are a few onions, several leeks, a handful of fresh greens, a round loaf of coarse bread, and perhaps a small piece of salted fish. Wealthier families might enjoy fresh meat more often, but for many ordinary Romans, vegetables, bread, beans, and olive oil form the heart of the evening meal. She places the basket upon a sturdy wooden table. There is no refrigerator to preserve fresh food. Meals depend upon what has been purchased that day, what has been stored carefully, or what grows in a small garden nearby. Every ingredient is valuable. Nothing is wasted. She begins by examining each vegetable with practiced eyes. The onions are firm. The greens remain crisp. The herbs still carry the fresh scent of the countryside. A few leaves that have begun to wilt are set aside for soup rather than discarded. Even these will find their purpose. The charcoal fire must first be awakened. Earlier in the day, glowing coals were carefully covered with ash to preserve their heat. Now she gently brushes away the gray layer, revealing tiny orange embers still alive beneath. She adds dry twigs collected earlier, blowing softly until thin curls of smoke rise into the air. Slowly, patiently, the fire begins to breathe once more. Small flames stretch upward. The room grows warmer. The comforting crackle of burning wood fills the quiet kitchen. There is something deeply familiar about this sound. Across the Roman world, from Britain in the far northwest to Egypt in the south, countless women hear this same gentle crackling each evening. Though they live hundreds or even thousands of miles apart, their daily routines remain remarkably similar. She reaches for a heavy stone mortar and pestle. Inside, she places garlic cloves, fresh herbs, and a pinch of coarse sea salt. With slow, circular movements, she crushes the ingredients together. Tap, grind, turn, tap, grind, turn. The scent of garlic quickly fills the room. Rosemary releases its pine-like fragrance. Thyme offers an earthy sweetness. Fresh parsley adds a clean, green aroma. As the herbs become a smooth paste, she pours in a little olive oil, stirring until the mixture becomes rich and fragrant. Olive oil is one of Rome's greatest treasures. It flavors food, lights lamps, softens skin, protects leather. It is used every single day, often many times before sunset. Nearby, a clay pot filled with lentils has been soaking since morning. She pours them into another cooking pot along with fresh water drawn earlier from a neighborhood fountain. Into the mixture go chopped onions, slices of leek, crushed garlic, and the herb paste she has just prepared. The pot is carefully lowered over the fire. Tiny bubbles begin to appear. Steam slowly rises. The scent of cooking lentils gently fills the home. It is not an extravagant aroma. It is simple, comforting, familiar. The smell of another ordinary evening. As the soup cooks, she turns her attention to the bread. Roman bread is often coarse and dense, made from wheat or barley flour ground between heavy stones. Today's loaf was purchased from a neighborhood baker before sunset, when ovens throughout the city filled the streets with the comforting smell of freshly baked bread. She slices the loaf carefully using a small iron knife. The crust is firm. The inside remains warm and soft. A little olive oil is drizzled over several pieces before they are placed beside a bowl of olives gathered from a ceramic jar. Some olives are green. Others are dark purple, nearly black. Their salty flavor balances the mild taste of bread and lentils perfectly. Across the room, another small clay pot contains goat cheese. The cheese is firm, slightly crumbly, and pleasantly sharp. She cuts small pieces for the family, arranging them neatly upon a simple wooden platter. Nothing is arranged to impress guests. Everything is prepared to nourish loved ones. Outside, the sounds of the city continue to soften. A donkey passes slowly down the narrow street. Children laugh somewhere nearby. A neighbor closes heavy wooden shutters. Someone calls good evening across a courtyard. The distant bark of a dog echoes briefly before silence returns. Inside the kitchen, the woman continues her work without hurry. There is comfort in routine. Each movement has been repeated hundreds, perhaps thousands of times throughout her life. She knows exactly how much water the soup requires. She knows when the bread should be sliced. She knows how long the fire will burn before fresh fuel must be added. These skills were not learned from written recipes. Most Roman women could not simply open a cookbook. Instead, knowledge passed quietly from mother to daughter, grandmother to granddaughter, through years of watching, helping, and practicing. Cooking was memory made visible. It carried the wisdom of generations. If the family has a little extra money this week, she may add a small portion of salted fish to the meal. Salted fish keeps well for many months, making it valuable throughout the Roman Empire. She cuts tiny pieces into the simmering pot. The fish melts slowly into the broth, adding richness without overwhelming the vegetables. Perhaps she also adds a spoonful of garum, the famous Roman fish sauce. Its smell is powerful, strange to modern noses. Yet to Romans it is as common as salt or pepper. Only a small amount is needed. Immediately the soup gains a deeper, more savory flavor. As darkness settles outside, another lamp is lit. Its tiny flame flickers gently, casting long shadows across the kitchen walls. The warm light reflects from polished bronze bowls and smooth clay jars. The room feels peaceful, safe, sheltered from the busy streets beyond. Soon, family members begin to gather. Children peek into the kitchen, curious about what is cooking. One asks whether the soup is ready. Another reaches toward the fresh bread. She smiles gently, reminding them to wait just a little longer. Patience too is part of the evening meal. The lentils have now become soft. The broth is thick and fragrant. She tastes a small spoonful. Perhaps one more pinch of salt. Perhaps another splash of olive oil. Satisfied, she removes the pot from the fire. The meal is ready. It is not luxurious. There are no exotic spices from distant India, no roasted peacocks served at imperial banquets, no silver plates glittering beneath candlelight. But this humble supper is enough. It fills hungry stomachs after a long day's work. It brings the family together before night fully settles over Rome. In countless homes across the empire, from the crowded streets of Pompeii to the peaceful farms of Gaul, from the villas of Hispania to the towns of North Africa, women are performing these very same tasks. They stir pots, slice bread, light lamps, and prepare food with quiet care. Their names have mostly been forgotten by history. No statues were raised in their honor. No triumphs celebrated their achievements. Yet every evening, through simple acts of cooking and care, they sustained families, preserved traditions, and kept the rhythm of Roman life alive. As the first bowls of warm lentil soup are carried to the table, the aroma fills the house. Outside, the city grows darker. Inside, the soft glow of oil lamps, the warmth of the fire, and the promise of a shared meal create a sense of peace that has remained familiar across thousands of years. And now, with supper ready, we quietly leave the kitchen behind and follow the family as they gather together for the evening. A time not only for eating, but for conversation, companionship, and the gentle close of another ordinary day in ancient Rome. As the last golden light of the evening slips behind the rooftops of Rome, the city begins to change once again. The busy sounds of commerce grow softer with each passing moment. The shouting of merchants becomes only an occasional distant voice. The clatter of wagon wheels fades along the stone streets. Even the birds that spent the day circling above the markets now search for places to rest beneath tiled roofs or in the branches of cypress trees. Inside the homes of ordinary Romans, another part of the day is just beginning. For many women, this is the hour when the household slowly gathers together once more. It is a gentle transition, not sudden but gradual, like the slow dimming of daylight itself. If you were standing quietly inside a modest Roman house, perhaps somewhere on a peaceful side street far from the noisy forum, you would notice that each member of the family returns at a different pace. The youngest children usually arrive first. Their feet are dusty from hours of playing outside. They have spent the afternoon chasing one another through narrow lanes, rolling hoops made from wood, tossing small balls, or inventing games that require little more than imagination. Their laughter often reaches the doorway before they do. One child runs inside carrying a smooth stone found near the river. Another proudly shows a feather collected from a pigeon. To adults, these treasures may seem ordinary. To children, they are priceless discoveries. Their mother welcomes them with patient eyes. She brushes dust from a tunic. She gently smooths tangled hair. Perhaps she asks where they have been. Perhaps she already knows. In Roman families, children were expected to help whenever they could. Older daughters may have spent much of the afternoon indoors beside their mother. They have already learned many household skills: spinning wool, sorting vegetables, cleaning pottery, preparing herbs. Even very young girls were slowly introduced to the work that would one day become their daily responsibility. Learning did not happen in classrooms for everyone. Much of it happened here inside the home. By watching, by listening, by practicing, again and again. A mother rarely delivered long lessons. Instead, she demonstrated a careful fold of cloth, a measured handful of grain, a steady movement of the spindle. Her daughter watched closely, then tried it herself, sometimes successfully, sometimes not. Mistakes were expected. Patience was part of the lesson. As twilight deepens, another familiar sound reaches the doorway. Heavy footsteps. The father has returned. Perhaps he worked as a craftsman, a baker, a mason, a merchant. a clerk, or maybe he spent the day helping manage another family's estate. His sandals are dusty. His shoulders carry the quiet weight of a long day's labor. He removes his cloak before entering farther into the house. Outside dirt belongs outside whenever possible. Inside, the home is meant to be orderly, not perfect, simply cared for. He greets his wife, sometimes with only a few words, sometimes with a tired smile. Roman families were not all alike. Some were affectionate, some were formal, some laughed easily, others spoke little, just as families do today. Nearby, grandparents may already be seated on low stools. If they still lived within the household, they often played an important role in family life. Age carried respect. Experience carried value. An elderly grandmother might quietly continue spinning wool while listening to every conversation around her. Her hands move almost without thought. Years of practice have made every motion effortless. Thread forms steadily between her fingers. The spindle turns. Again and again. The rhythm itself feels calming. Children sometimes gather around older relatives. Grandparents have stories. Not grand tales of emperors or famous generals. Instead, they tell stories of neighbors, harvests, family memories, strange weather from years ago, animals that escaped, unexpected visitors, little moments that slowly became family history. For children, these stories are endlessly fascinating. The evening meal has not yet begun. There is still time for conversation. The mother checks the cooking pot once more. Steam rises gently. She stirs lentils with a wooden spoon. The scent of onions and herbs fills the room. Fresh bread waits nearby beneath a cloth. A small dish of olives rests beside goat cheese. Nothing extravagant, simply enough. Simple meals were common for ordinary Roman families. Luxury belonged mostly to the wealthy. Most people appreciated food because it filled empty stomachs after long hours of work. Conversation flows naturally. Children describe their games. One insists he almost caught a bird. Another claims she found the prettiest flower in all of Rome. Perhaps the story grows slightly larger with each telling. Parents smile. Children have always enjoyed making adventures sound just a little more exciting. Sometimes neighbors stop briefly at the doorway. Roman neighborhoods were close. People knew one another. A borrowed tool is returned. A short message is delivered. Someone asks whether fresh figs will be available at tomorrow's market. Another mentions that a traveling merchant has arrived from a distant province. News traveled from person to person. Without newspapers, without telephones, without screens. Conversation itself carried information across the city. Inside wealthier homes, the gathering looks somewhat different. Servants quietly move between rooms. Oil lamps are carefully lit one by one. Bronze holders reflect warm golden light across painted walls. The mistress of the household oversees everything. She checks preparations, ensures food is ready, confirms guests, if expected, are properly welcomed. Her responsibilities are different from those of poorer women. Yet they are still responsibilities. Managing a large household required organization. Servants needed instruction. Supplies needed counting. Visitors needed receiving. Nothing happened by accident. Everything depended upon careful attention. Meanwhile, outside the home, darkness spreads slowly across Rome. The city streets become quieter. Only scattered footsteps echo between stone buildings. Some shops have already closed completely. Others finish their final sales beneath flickering lamps. The smell of evening cooking rises from countless homes. Every neighborhood seems wrapped in its own gentle cloud of bread, herbs, smoke, and warm olive oil. Inside one modest apartment high above the street, another family gathers around a tiny wooden table. There is little space. Children sit closely together. Parents share a bench. The room feels crowded, yet also warm. Home is measured not only by size. Sometimes it is measured by togetherness. The youngest child grows sleepy before supper has even begun. His head slowly rests against his mother's shoulder. She gently strokes his hair while continuing her conversation. No hurry. The meal will begin soon enough. Across the city, thousands of women are doing nearly the same thing. Checking food, watching children, greeting family members, lighting lamps, straightening blankets, preparing tomorrow without even realizing it. History often remembers emperors because they changed nations. Yet ordinary women quietly change generations. Every evening they created something less visible than monuments. They created stability. Children learned kindness because someone showed them. Families remained organized because someone planned ahead. Homes remained welcoming because someone cared for them every single day. Most historians cannot tell us the names of these women. Their names rarely appear in official records. They left behind few statues, no grand speeches, no military victories. Yet they shaped Roman society in countless invisible ways. The empire depended not only upon soldiers marching across distant frontiers. It also depended upon mothers teaching children, grandmothers preserving traditions, wives managing households, daughters learning skills that would one day support families of their own. These ordinary evenings repeated themselves year after year, season after season, generation after generation. As lamps glowed softly inside thousands of homes, another Roman day gently came to its close. Outside, the stars slowly appeared above the tiled rooftops. Inside, warm conversations continued. Small worries were shared. Simple joys were celebrated. Tomorrow would bring another busy day, another market, another meal, another list of endless household tasks. But for this quiet hour, families were together. The world beyond their walls could wait until morning. For now, the evening belonged to home. And in homes throughout ancient Rome, women remained at the quiet center of family life, guiding each ordinary evening with steady hands, gentle patience, and countless unseen acts of care. The evening meal has ended. The last pieces of bread have been shared. The bowls that only moments ago held warm lentils and fragrant vegetables are nearly empty. Quiet conversation slowly fades, replaced by the gentle sounds of everyday work beginning once again. For many women in ancient Rome, the end of supper did not mean the end of the day. Instead, another part of their routine quietly unfolded. Imagine yourself inside a Roman home as the daylight slowly disappears beyond the rooftops. The warm glow of a small oil lamp now becomes the brightest light in the room. Its flame dances gently, casting soft shadows that move across painted walls and worn wooden furniture. Outside, the streets grow quieter. The voices of merchants have disappeared. A distant dog barks somewhere beyond the neighborhood, and the evening breeze carries the scent of olive trees, smoke, and fresh earth. Inside, however, there is still much to do. A Roman woman rises from her place after the meal. There is no rush. Her movements are practiced and familiar, repeated nearly every evening throughout her life. She begins by gathering the clay bowls from the table, stacking them carefully so they will not chip against one another. Wooden spoons are collected. Cups used for diluted wine are placed together near a basin of water. Even something as ordinary as cleaning required patience. Without running water inside most homes, every drop had to be carried from a public fountain or collected earlier in the day. Water was valuable. A woman might rinse dishes carefully, using only as much as needed before drying them with a simple linen cloth. The smell of warm bread still lingers in the air. The charcoal fire, which cooked the evening meal, now burns lower. She carefully spreads the glowing coals apart so they cool safely through the night. Fuel was expensive, and no one wished to waste precious wood. Sometimes a few embers were preserved beneath ash, making it easier to light the next morning's fire. The kitchen gradually becomes quieter. Now her attention turns toward tomorrow. Unlike many modern kitchens filled with refrigerators and cupboards overflowing with packaged food, a Roman household depended on careful planning. Every loaf of bread, every handful of grain, every bottle of olive oil represented hours of labor. Nothing could be taken for granted. She lifts the heavy clay lid from a storage jar. Inside rests barley, one of the family's most important foods. She reaches inside, allowing the grains to slip slowly between her fingers. There is enough for another few days. Quietly, she nods to herself. Nearby stands another jar filled with dried beans. Another holds lentils. One contains olives preserved in brine. Each vessel tells a silent story of preparation completed weeks or even months before. If supplies appear lower than expected, she makes a mental note. Tomorrow someone must visit the market. Perhaps more onions. Perhaps fresh herbs. Perhaps another wheel of goat cheese if the family can afford it. There are no written grocery lists resting on the table. Instead, memory becomes the household ledger. Roman women often remembered astonishing amounts of information. How much flour remained? Which servant had finished washing linens? How many eggs the hens had laid? Whether the youngest child needed new sandals before winter? Whether an elderly parent required fresh medicine prepared from herbs? These details lived quietly inside their minds, carried from one evening into the next. Nearby, a basket overflows with clothing needing attention. Roman garments might appear simple, but fabric required constant care. A small tear left untouched could quickly become much larger. Replacing clothing was expensive. Repairing it was simply part of everyday life. She picks up a woolen tunic. The fabric feels rough beneath her fingers. Candlelight flickers across the pale threads as she carefully guides a bronze needle through the cloth. Back and forth, again and again. Each stitch is almost identical to the last. The rhythm becomes calming. The soft scrape of thread passing through wool fills the quiet room. Perhaps beside her sits an older daughter. She watches closely. One day these same responsibilities will become her own. Patiently, her mother explains how to keep each stitch even. Not too tight, not too loose. Strong enough to survive many months of wear. Lessons like these rarely took place in formal classrooms. The household itself became the classroom. Knowledge passed gently from one generation to another. Nearby rests a wooden basket overflowing with raw wool. Its texture is soft but uneven. Before beautiful cloth could be woven, the wool had already been washed, combed, and prepared. Now comes spinning. She reaches for her spindle. With practiced hands she twists loose fibers into a long, steady thread. The spindle turns gracefully beneath her fingers. Round and round. The motion hardly requires conscious thought anymore. Many Roman women spent countless hours spinning wool. Poets sometimes praised diligent wives by describing them seated beside the evening lamp, quietly spinning while the household rested. Whether rich or poor, spinning represented order, patience, and careful management of the home. The room grows even quieter. Children begin rubbing sleepy eyes. A baby lets out a soft cry. Without hesitation, she pauses her work. Household duties can wait. She lifts the infant gently into her arms. Evening after evening. As the baby drifts toward sleep once more, she returns the child to a simple cradle made of wood. Nearby, another child struggles to stay awake. He asks another question. Will father tell another story tonight? She smiles softly. Perhaps, perhaps not. There is still work to finish. Across the room, an older relative quietly watches. Grandmothers often remained important members of Roman households. Their experience guided younger women through every stage of domestic life. Advice might come gently. Store the figs higher. Cover the oil. Turn the bread basket. These small instructions reflected decades of practical wisdom. Little was wasted. Everything had its proper place. In wealthier homes, servants carried out many physical tasks. Yet even there, the lady of the household often supervised every detail. She inspected food supplies, assigned tomorrow's work, checked whether lamps contained enough oil, ensured linens had been washed, oversaw children's education. managed accounts for household expenses. Running a large Roman household resembled managing a small business. Success depended on organization. Mistakes could become costly. As darkness deepens outside, she begins preparing for tomorrow morning. A small bowl of grain is measured carefully. Another loaf of bread is wrapped in cloth. Fresh water jars are checked once again. If they are low, someone must rise early to refill them. Morning always arrives sooner than expected. Outside, the moon now hangs above the rooftops. Its pale light filters through an open courtyard, mixing gently with the golden glow of oil lamps. The sounds of the city continue to fade. A donkey brays somewhere in the distance. Footsteps echo briefly across stone streets. Then silence returns. Inside the house, the final chores continue without complaint. Not because they are easy, but because they are necessary. For Roman women, responsibility was woven into nearly every hour of the day. They organized, prepared, repaired, remembered, planned, taught, comforted. Their labor often went unnoticed by history's greatest writers, who preferred recording the deeds of emperors and generals. Yet without these ordinary women, countless Roman households simply could not have functioned. The great cities of the empire depended not only upon soldiers guarding distant frontiers or senators debating laws in marble halls, but also upon quiet evenings like this one. An evening spent mending a child's tunic, checking a jar of barley, rocking a sleepy baby, saving the last glowing embers for tomorrow's fire. History often remembers the extraordinary, but most lives were made from ordinary moments. And perhaps nowhere is that more visible than here, inside this peaceful Roman home, where a woman's work continues softly beneath the gentle light of an oil lamp until, one by one, every task has finally been completed, and the quiet promise of another ordinary tomorrow waits just beyond the coming dawn. By the time the evening meal had ended, the sounds inside a Roman home began to soften. The clatter of wooden bowls and clay cups faded away. The cooking fire burned lower, sending a warm orange glow across the room. Outside, the streets were growing quieter as merchants closed their shops and travelers hurried toward home before darkness fully settled over the city. For many Roman women, however, the day was not yet over. Some of the most important work remained. Children still needed care. Little hands had to be washed. Dusty feet cleaned after a day of running through courtyards and narrow streets. Hair tangled by the wind had to be gently brushed. And sleepy little voices still had one last story to tell before the household could finally rest. Imagine yourself sitting quietly in the corner of a modest Roman home. The walls are built from stone, keeping the room pleasantly cool even after the heat of the day. A single olive oil lamp flickers beside the family shrine, its flame dancing gently whenever a breeze slips through the open doorway. Nearby, a mother kneels beside a wooden basin filled with warm water. One by one, her children step forward. There is no hurry. Everything moves at the peaceful rhythm of evening. She dips a soft linen cloth into the water and carefully wipes the dust from a young boy's face. Tiny streaks of dirt disappear beneath the damp cloth, revealing flushed cheeks that still carry the excitement of a long day spent exploring. His little sister waits patiently beside him, hugging a cloth doll stitched together from scraps of old linen. The doll is simple. Its face is embroidered with only a few careful stitches. Yet to the child, it is every bit as precious as the finest toy owned by the children of wealthy senators. The mother smiles gently. She brushes a loose curl away from her daughter's forehead. Perhaps she says nothing at all. Not every moment requires words. Sometimes kindness is found in silence. Roman families often lived close together. In wealthy homes, children might sleep in rooms near their parents. In smaller homes or crowded apartment buildings known as insulae, entire families sometimes shared a single room. Privacy as we understand it today was uncommon. Instead, family life unfolded together. The sounds of breathing, the quiet whispers before sleep, the gentle creaking of wooden furniture. These familiar noises became comforting companions throughout the night. As the youngest children finish washing, their mother begins combing their hair. Roman combs were often carved from wood or bone. The teeth were fine and carefully shaped. Long hair, especially for girls, required patience, slow strokes, gentle hands. Occasionally a stubborn knot would appear, causing a child to wince ever so slightly. The mother would pause. Perhaps she would laugh softly, then continue with even greater care. For little girls, hair was often braided before bedtime. Not into elaborate styles worn during festivals, but into simple braids that would stay neat through the night. These evening routines were practical. They also carried quiet affection. A braid carefully tied before sleep spoke of love just as clearly as any spoken words. Meanwhile, older daughters often helped with younger brothers and sisters. Roman girls learned household responsibilities from an early age. By the time they reached their early teenage years, many had already mastered spinning wool, preparing food, cleaning, and caring for infants. As they watched their mothers, they slowly learned the rhythm of Roman family life. Tonight, an older sister gently rocks a baby in her arms. She hums softly. Not a grand melody performed in a theater. Simply a quiet tune known only within her family. Perhaps her own mother sang it years before. And perhaps her grandmother before that. Songs traveled across generations more faithfully than written books. No one remembers who first created the lullaby. It simply belongs to the family now. The baby blinks slowly. Tiny fingers grasp the edge of the girl's tunic. Outside, somewhere beyond the walls, a dog barks once before falling silent again. The night is settling over Rome. Nearby, another child sits cross-legged on the floor. His mother hands him a small cup of watered wine mixed lightly with honey, or perhaps simply cool water drawn earlier from the public fountain. Roman drinking water was not always perfectly clean by modern standards, but families did their best to keep fresh supplies stored inside clay jars. The cool water feels refreshing after the warmth of the evening meal. Soon the child begins rubbing sleepy eyes. His excitement from the day slowly fades. Like children everywhere, Roman children sometimes resisted bedtime. One might insist on hearing another story. Another might ask endless questions. What will we do tomorrow? Will father take me to the market? Can I feed the chickens again? Their mother answers patiently. Tomorrow will come soon enough. Now it is time for rest. Stories often filled these final quiet moments. Not every Roman family owned books. In fact, books were expensive and uncommon among ordinary people. Stories instead lived inside memory. Parents shared tales they themselves had heard as children. Some spoke of brave heroes. Others told gentle animal stories. Many included lessons about honesty, courage, kindness, or wisdom. A grandmother might tell of clever foxes. A father might describe the adventures of Hercules. A mother might simply invent a comforting tale about a friendly sparrow building its nest beneath the roof. The children listened with wide eyes. The shadows dancing across the walls made every story feel just a little more magical. Sometimes they laughed quietly. Sometimes they gasped at surprising moments. But gradually, little by little, their eyelids grew heavier. Roman mothers also cared for infants throughout the evening. Babies required constant attention. Cloth wrappings needed changing. Small blankets adjusted. Tiny bodies kept warm as nighttime temperatures slowly cooled. Many mothers breastfed their own children, while wealthier families sometimes employed wet nurses to help care for infants. Even in homes with servants, however, mothers often remained deeply involved in their children's evening routines. Love could not be delegated. It was expressed through countless small acts. A gentle touch, a reassuring smile, a whispered good night. As the hour grew later, the youngest children were finally carried toward their sleeping places. Beds in ancient Rome varied greatly. Poor families often slept upon simple straw mattresses laid directly upon wooden frames or even the floor. More comfortable homes might have woven rope beds topped with stuffed mattresses filled with wool, feathers, or dried plant fibers. Regardless of wealth, every child appreciated the simple comfort of a warm blanket after a long day. The mother carefully tucked the blanket beneath tiny shoulders. She checked once more that the lamp was safely positioned. Its flame should provide enough light without becoming dangerous. Fire was one of the greatest fears inside Roman cities. A single overturned lamp could threaten an entire neighborhood. So every evening, women paid close attention to these small but important details. The children whispered their final questions. Their voices became softer, then softer still. Eventually, silence answered for them. Across the room, older family members continued quiet conversations. Someone mended a sandal. Another spun wool beneath the lamp's glow. The work continued gently, but no one wished to disturb the sleeping children. The house itself seemed to breathe more slowly now. Outside, the stars emerged above tiled rooftops. The moon climbed steadily higher into the dark sky. Somewhere in the distance, the faint footsteps of the night watch echoed along stone streets. Inside, however, everything felt peaceful. The youngest child sighed in sleep. Another rolled gently onto one side. A cloth doll rested beneath a small arm. The mother watched for a moment longer. Only when she was certain every child slept comfortably did she quietly stand. There were still a few tasks waiting before her own rest could begin. But she allowed herself one final glance at the peaceful faces before turning back toward the fading fire. Tomorrow the children would awaken with fresh energy. They would laugh, play, learn, help with small chores, ask endless questions. And when evening came once more, this gentle rhythm would begin again. Night after night, season after season, year after year. Across the vast Roman world, from humble country cottages to elegant villas overlooking the sea, countless women ended their days in much the same way, caring for the smallest members of their families with quiet patience, gentle hands, and a love that needed no grand words. As the oil lamp flickers softly and the last whispers fade into silence, the Roman household grows still. The children dream beneath woolen blankets. The mother steps quietly into the next part of her evening. And outside, under a sky filled with ancient stars, another peaceful Roman night unfolds. The evening air has grown cooler now. The last traces of sunlight rest gently upon the rooftops of Rome, painting the clay tiles with shades of amber and rose. The noise of the busy streets has softened into a distant murmur. Merchants have closed their wooden stalls. Bakers have swept flour from their floors. Children who spent the afternoon chasing one another through narrow alleyways are beginning to grow quiet. For many women across the Roman world, this is the hour when the body finally asks for rest. Not complete rest, not yet. There are still a few peaceful rituals before sleep arrives. Among the most comforting of these is washing away the dust of the day. If you close your eyes for a moment and imagine yourself inside a Roman home, you might picture a modest courtyard open to the evening sky. A small fountain trickles softly in the center. Olive trees cast long shadows over the stone pavement, and climbing vines cling to white plaster walls. The scent of rosemary drifts gently through the warm air. Inside, an oil lamp has already been lit. Its golden flame dances quietly against the walls, filling the room with a warm glow that makes every object appear softer than it did beneath the bright afternoon sun. A Roman woman removes the shawl that protected her from the day's sun. She loosens the ribbons that held her hair in place since morning. Her shoulders relax as the weight of another long day slowly slips away. Unlike many people today, Romans did not always wash with soap. Soap existed in some places, but it was not a common part of daily Roman bathing. Instead, olive oil was considered one of the finest ways to clean the skin. The oil was smooth, fragrant, and gentle. Small pottery bottles filled with olive oil rested on wooden shelves inside many homes. Wealthier families often scented the oil with herbs or flowers. Lavender, rose petals, iris, myrtle, and sweet marjoram might all lend their delicate fragrance to the evening ritual. The woman pours a little oil into her hands. She rubs it slowly across her arms, her shoulders, and her face. The warm oil gathers the dust, sweat, and fine grit that the city has left behind throughout the day. In larger bathhouses, this oil would later be scraped away using a curved bronze tool called a strigil. At home, however, many women simply wipe the oil away with soft linen cloths, leaving their skin clean and lightly moisturized. It is a simple process, slow, quiet, comforting. There is no hurry now. The evening belongs to calm movements. Perhaps a servant has warmed water over a charcoal fire. The water is carried carefully in heavy clay jars. Steam curls gently into the air as it is poured into a shallow basin. The woman kneels beside it. She dips a linen cloth into the warm water. Then she gently washes her face. The day's heat disappears little by little. She washes her hands, her wrists, her neck. Finally, she lets the cool water touch her feet. For someone who has spent hours walking across uneven stone streets in leather sandals, this simple act must have felt wonderfully refreshing. Imagine how pleasant the sensation would have been. Cool water against tired feet after an entire day of standing in kitchens, visiting markets, carrying baskets, tending children, spinning wool, and completing dozens of quiet household tasks. The body begins to relax. The mind follows. In wealthy Roman homes, bathing could be a more elaborate experience. Private bathing rooms, called balnea, were sometimes built within large villas. These rooms were modest compared to the enormous public bath complexes, yet they offered comfort and privacy. Marble floors reflected the flickering lamplight. Bronze basins gleamed softly. Small windows allowed the evening breeze to enter while protecting the family from the noise outside. Servants might prepare towels made from fine linen. Perfumed oils stood ready in decorated glass bottles imported from distant provinces. Some fragrances traveled incredible distances before reaching Rome. Frankincense crossed deserts. Cinnamon came from lands far to the east. Myrrh traveled through busy ports beside the Red Sea. Each precious drop reminded Romans that their empire stretched across continents. Yet even among great wealth, the evening bath remained gentle rather than extravagant. Its purpose was comfort. Its purpose was peace. For women living in more modest homes, luxury mattered much less than cleanliness and routine. A simple clay bowl, a small jug of water, one clean cloth, that was often enough. The ritual itself carried meaning. It marked the end of labor. It separated the busy hours of daylight from the quiet promise of night. Across the city, thousands of women followed remarkably similar routines. Some washed while speaking softly with sisters or daughters. Others enjoyed a few rare moments of silence. Some listened to nearby neighbors chatting through open courtyards. Others heard only crickets singing beneath the evening stars. Not every Roman woman bathed at home. Many had already visited the public baths earlier in the afternoon. Roman bathhouses were among the greatest engineering achievements of the ancient world. Massive furnaces heated water beneath stone floors using a system called the hypocaust. Warm air flowed beneath the buildings, heating rooms from below. Visitors passed through different chambers. Some rooms were pleasantly warm. Others were filled with hot steam. Still others offered cool pools where bathers refreshed themselves before returning home. Although public baths welcomed many members of society, customs varied from city to city. Sometimes men and women visited at different hours. Sometimes separate facilities were available. In every case, bathing was about far more than becoming clean. It was also a social experience. Friends met one another. Neighbors exchanged news. Families relaxed together. Business agreements were sometimes discussed. Children laughed while splashing in shallow pools. Elderly visitors sat quietly in warm rooms, enjoying conversation that drifted lazily through the rising steam. By evening, however, these lively bathhouses also grew quiet. Attendants swept the floors. Oil lamps were extinguished one by one. Doors closed until another sunrise welcomed new visitors. Back at home, the Roman woman sits upon a small wooden stool. Her hair, once tightly arranged, now falls freely around her shoulders. Hair care required patience. Roman hairstyles could be remarkably intricate. During the day, pins, ribbons, and careful braids held everything neatly in place. Removing them was almost a ceremony of its own. One pin, then another still. The hair slowly loosens. A wooden comb passes gently through each long strand. Perhaps her daughter sits nearby, carefully helping to untangle small knots. Perhaps her mother once did exactly the same for her many years earlier. Across generations, these quiet evening moments remained almost unchanged. Hair was often scented with fragrant oils after combing. A few drops were enough. Not strong, only subtle. The gentle fragrance lingered into the night. Sometimes flowers decorated the hair during festivals or celebrations. Tonight, however, there is no celebration, only an ordinary evening. And somehow, that ordinary evening feels beautiful precisely because it is so ordinary. Outside, darkness settles across the city. The first stars begin to appear above Rome. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks once. Another answers. Then silence returns. Inside the house, the oil lamp burns steadily. Its flame reflects inside polished bronze mirrors. These mirrors were never perfectly clear. Their reflections shimmered softly, making every face appear touched by warm candlelight. The woman studies herself only briefly, not with vanity, simply to make sure every braid has been loosened, every ribbon removed, every trace of dust washed away. Tomorrow will bring another day of work, another market, another meal to prepare, another household to care for. But tomorrow can wait. This evening belongs only to the present moment. Fresh linen clothing replaces garments worn throughout the day. The fabric feels cool against clean skin. Loose garments are far more comfortable than the carefully arranged clothing required outside the home. Children, already washed, begin to grow sleepy. One yawns. Another rubs tired eyes. Soft laughter fills the room. The day's busiest hours are finished. The pace slows almost naturally. Even conversation changes. Voices become quieter. Movements become gentler. There is no need to hurry anymore. In many homes, the evening bath was also a moment of quiet reflection. The warm water washed away more than dust. It washed away frustration. It eased aching muscles. It offered a brief pause between responsibility and rest. Perhaps this feeling is familiar even today. Across 2,000 years, people still find comfort in warm water after a long day. The details have changed. Modern bathrooms contain showers, bathtubs, and running water. Roman homes relied on clay jars, heated basins, and patient hands. Yet the purpose remains surprisingly similar: to feel clean, to feel lighter, to prepare both body and mind for peaceful sleep. Soon the oil lamp will burn lower. The household shrine will receive its evening prayers. Children will climb beneath warm blankets. The city beyond the walls will grow quieter still. But for now, the gentle ritual of bathing has brought calm to another ordinary Roman evening. The dust of the streets has disappeared. The scent of olive oil lingers softly in the air. And beneath the quiet stars above ancient Rome, another peaceful night is ready to begin. As the evening settled gently over the Roman world, another kind of quiet began to fill the home. The busy sounds of cooking had faded. Wooden bowls had been washed and placed carefully upon their shelves. The last pieces of bread were wrapped in cloth to remain fresh until morning. Children had grown sleepy after a long day of playing in dusty streets or helping with simple household tasks. Even the animals had become calmer. Chickens rested upon their wooden perches, while the household dog stretched beside the doorway, listening only half-heartedly to distant footsteps outside. Now, for many Roman women, came one of the day's most peaceful moments. Before sleep, before the lamps were extinguished, and before darkness completely embraced the city, there remained one final duty, not a task of cleaning or cooking, but one of quiet devotion. Religion in ancient Rome was not something reserved only for magnificent temples of white marble or grand festivals celebrated before thousands of people. Those impressive ceremonies certainly existed, and they were an important part of Roman life. Yet the heart of Roman religion often lived inside ordinary homes, in spaces no larger than a cupboard. Almost every Roman household possessed a small sacred place known today as the lararium. Imagine standing inside a comfortable Roman home. Nearby, the walls are painted with soft reds, yellows, and earthy browns. The floor beneath your feet is cool stone or simple packed earth, depending upon the family's wealth. Oil lamps cast warm circles of golden light, leaving gentle shadows dancing across the room. Against one wall stands a tiny shrine. Sometimes it is nothing more than a painted niche in the plaster. Wealthier families may own beautifully carved wooden cabinets or miniature marble temples with tiny columns supporting elegant roofs. Some are decorated with bright colors, while others hold small bronze or clay statues polished smooth by generations of careful hands. This humble corner is one of the most important places in the entire house. Here dwell the household gods. The Romans believed that unseen spirits watched over family life. These protective beings were not distant or mysterious. They were close companions, present every day, quietly guarding the home, the food, the family, and even the fire burning in the kitchen. The Laras watched over the household itself. The Penates protected the family's food and supplies. Each family also honored the spirit of its ancestors, believing that those who had passed away continued to care for their descendants. For Roman women, these small rituals were woven naturally into daily life. As evening approached, the mother of the household often became the guardian of this peaceful ceremony. She approaches the shrine with slow and familiar movements. Perhaps she carries a tiny clay lamp. Its small flame flickers gently, illuminating her face with warm golden light. She carefully trims the blackened wick if necessary before adding another drop of fragrant olive oil. Then she places the lamp before the little statues. Nothing hurried happens here. Every movement has become almost automatic through years of practice. Outside, somewhere beyond the thick walls of the house, distant voices drift through narrow streets. A cart rolls slowly across uneven stones. Somewhere a dog barks once before settling again into silence. Inside, however, only the soft crackle of the lamp can be heard. The woman folds her hands. She lowers her head. Perhaps she whispers only a few simple words. Protect this house. Keep our children safe. Bless tomorrow's work. The prayers are usually brief. Romans rarely expected long emotional conversations with their gods. Instead, religion often resembled a respectful exchange. The family offered gratitude. The gods offered protection. This balance formed an important part of Roman daily life. Small offerings frequently accompanied these evening prayers. A few grains of wheat, a tiny piece of fresh bread, several olives, a splash of diluted wine. Occasionally, fragrant incense filled the room with curling streams of sweet smoke. Imagine the gentle scent of pine resin and herbs slowly rising toward the ceiling, where wooden beams disappeared into darkness. The smoke drifted quietly through the house, carrying with it the family's hopes for another peaceful night. Children often watched these ceremonies with curious eyes. Some stood beside their mothers, trying very hard to remain still. Others copied the movements they had seen hundreds of times before. Even very young children learned where to place the small offering, how to bow politely, how to remain quiet while the lamp burned. In this way, religion passed naturally from one generation to the next, not through books, not through classrooms, but through gentle observation inside the home. Many Roman women also remembered family members who were no longer alive. A grandfather whose wise stories had once filled the evenings. A grandmother who had taught spinning and weaving. A child whose life had ended far too early. Although sadness existed, these memories often carried comfort rather than fear. The ancestors remained part of the household. Their love, it was believed, continued beyond death. This quiet belief brought reassurance during uncertain times. Life in ancient Rome was never entirely predictable. Illness could arrive suddenly. Harvests sometimes failed. Journeys carried risks. Fires occasionally swept through crowded neighborhoods. Yet these evening rituals offered something deeply comforting. They reminded every member of the household that they belonged to something larger than themselves. To a family. To generations. To traditions stretching back hundreds of years. The oil lamp continued burning. Its flame danced softly whenever a cool breeze slipped beneath the doorway. Golden light shimmered across painted walls. Tiny bronze statues seemed almost alive as their shadows gently moved. For a few peaceful moments, all the worries of the day faded into the background. Tomorrow would bring new work, more bread to bake, more wool to spin, more water to carry, more children to guide. But tomorrow had not yet arrived. Tonight belonged to stillness. Sometimes the woman remained seated before the shrine after everyone else had retired. She listened to the quiet breathing of her sleeping children in nearby rooms. She heard the gentle creaking of the house as cooler night air settled over roof tiles and wooden beams. Above the city, countless stars slowly appeared. Unlike the brightly lit cities of today, ancient Rome became remarkably dark after sunset. Beyond the glow of scattered oil lamps, the heavens stretched brilliantly overhead. The same stars watched over emperors and merchants, over soldiers and shepherds, over wealthy matrons living in elegant villas and humble women living high above crowded streets and apartment buildings. Every family ended the day beneath that same silent sky. Perhaps the woman glanced upward through an open courtyard. She recognized familiar constellations passed down through generations. Some told stories of heroes. Others reminded Romans of powerful gods who ruled the heavens. The night itself became another reminder that human lives were only one small part of a much larger world. Eventually, the time came to end the evening ritual. The final prayer was spoken. The last offering rested quietly before the shrine. The woman carefully adjusted the lamp so that its flame would continue burning safely for a while longer, casting its comforting glow through the peaceful home. Tomorrow morning, another day would begin. The household gods would still stand patiently in their little shrine. The family would greet them once again. But for now, the house rested in silence, protected by tradition, comforted by faith, and gently embraced by the calm, peaceful night of ancient Rome. The evening meal has ended. The last pieces of bread have been gathered from the table. A clay pitcher still holds a little watered wine, and the warm smell of roasted onions, herbs, and fresh olive oil lingers gently in the room. Outside, the sky has turned a deep shade of blue, where only a faint orange ribbon remains along the western horizon. One by one, stars begin to appear above the rooftops of ancient Rome. Now, for many women, a quieter part of the day begins. The busiest chores have finally been completed. The children have been washed and dressed for bed. The animals have been fed. The fire burns lower than before, glowing softly instead of roaring with bright flames. Oil lamps cast gentle circles of golden light across plaster walls, making every shadow seem to dance ever so slightly. For just a little while there is time to rest. Not everyone has this luxury. Some women are still spinning wool or finishing work that could not wait until morning. Others continue serving wealthy families long into the night. Yet even in homes where work never truly ends, there are often a few peaceful moments before sleep arrives. Those moments are precious. Unlike today, there are no glowing television screens, no mobile phones, no radios humming in the background. The sounds of entertainment are entirely human. They come from voices, music, laughter, and stories passed from one generation to another. If you could quietly step into an ordinary Roman home this evening, you would notice that the family naturally gathers together once darkness falls. The youngest children sit close to their mothers. Older sons stretch tired legs after a long day of helping in workshops or markets. Grandparents settle onto sturdy wooden stools, wrapping simple woolen shawls around their shoulders as the evening air becomes cooler. Nobody rushes. The Roman world moves more slowly after sunset. The streets outside grow quieter with every passing minute. Shopkeepers have already closed their shutters. The blacksmith's hammer has fallen silent. Bakers no longer slide loaves into glowing ovens. Even the animals seem calmer now. Inside the home, conversation becomes the evening's greatest entertainment. A daughter might describe something amusing she saw at the market earlier that day. Perhaps she watched a stubborn donkey refuse to move despite every effort of its owner. Everyone smiles as she imitates the animal's stubborn expression. Her younger brother eagerly interrupts, insisting his own story is even better. Their mother laughs softly before reminding them to take turns speaking. These simple conversations help strengthen the family. There is no need for grand adventures. Everyday moments are enough. A grandmother remembers her own childhood many decades earlier. She tells stories of harsh winters, plentiful harvests, and festivals that filled the streets with flowers and music. Her grandchildren have heard many of these stories before, yet they listen once again. There is comfort in familiar tales. Repetition feels reassuring. It reminds everyone that life continues through seasons, generations, and countless ordinary evenings just like this one. Sometimes someone begins to sing. Roman songs are often simple, with melodies that can easily be remembered. A mother hums quietly while continuing to twist loose wool into neat strands. Her voice is gentle rather than powerful. Soon another family member joins her. The room fills with soft harmony. No audience applauds. No performance is expected. The music belongs only to the family. Some homes own a small musical instrument. Perhaps a modest lyre hangs upon the wall. Its wooden frame has become polished from years of careful hands lifting and playing it. A daughter gently plucks its strings, producing warm notes that float through the quiet room. The melody is unhurried. Each note fades naturally before another takes its place. Sometimes a reed flute accompanies the lyre. Its sound is light and airy, almost like a cool evening breeze passing through olive trees outside the city. Professional musicians certainly exist in ancient Rome, but ordinary families rarely enjoy elaborate performances within their homes. Instead, music is personal. It belongs to parents, children, neighbors, and friends. It is imperfect, yet its imperfections make it beautiful. The music is woven into everyday life rather than separated from it. Children often enjoy games before bedtime. Without manufactured toys filling large shelves, imagination becomes wonderfully important. A handful of carved wooden animals can provide endless entertainment. Smooth stones become imaginary soldiers. Small dolls made from cloth or carved wood are carefully dressed and carried through pretend adventures. A little girl gently rocks her doll to sleep just as she has watched her own mother comfort her younger siblings. In this way, children quietly practice the responsibilities they may one day have as adults. Some families enjoy simple board games. One popular game resembles modern checkers, while others use pebbles, carved counters, or small pieces of bone. Dice are also common throughout Roman society. Although gambling can become excessive for some adults, many families simply enjoy friendly games that pass the evening peacefully. Laughter occasionally escapes into the quiet house. Someone celebrates an unexpected victory. Someone else jokingly accuses the winner of impossible luck. The smiles quickly return. Across the city, neighbors experience similar evenings. Behind thousands of wooden doors, countless families gather around tiny circles of lamplight. Some speak loudly. Others barely whisper. Some are wealthy enough to own beautifully painted walls and marble floors. Others live in cramped apartments where several people share a single room. Yet evening brings them all the same gift. Darkness slows the pace of life. Many Roman women use these quieter hours to continue teaching their daughters. The lessons are not delivered in formal classrooms. Instead, they unfold naturally through conversation. A mother explains how to recognize good olive oil. She demonstrates the proper way to fold linen. She shares recipes learned from her own mother many years ago. She teaches patience while spinning wool. She reminds her daughter that careful preparation today makes tomorrow much easier. Knowledge passes gently from one generation to the next. No books are required. Memory is enough. Outside, the moon climbs higher into the night sky. Its silver light touches tiled rooftops and narrow streets below. Here and there, a late traveler walks quickly toward home. A pair of sandals taps softly against worn stone pavement. Far away, a dog begins barking. Another answers somewhere beyond the next neighborhood. Soon the sounds disappear once more. Inside the house, stories continue. Romans love stories. Some tell ancient myths about brave heroes. Others recount clever adventures of ordinary people. Children especially enjoy tales filled with talking animals, mysterious forests, and gods disguised as travelers. Whether every story is true matters very little. Their purpose is not history. Their purpose is wonder. As the stories unfold, younger children slowly grow quieter. Heavy eyelids begin to close. One child leans against her mother's shoulder. Another curls beside a grandmother. The flickering lamp creates warm patterns across peaceful faces. Time itself seems slower. No clocks announce each passing hour. No alarms interrupt the silence. Instead, the family senses the night through habit. The oil in the lamp burns lower. The fire becomes glowing embers. The air grows cooler. The stars multiply above Rome. These gentle signs tell everyone that bedtime is approaching. For many women, this final hour of the evening is one of the few moments entirely shared with those they love. Tomorrow will bring another sunrise, another day of cooking, cleaning, shopping, spinning, teaching, caring, working. Yet tonight there is no need to think too far ahead. Tonight there is only this peaceful room, only this warm light, only familiar voices, only the comforting rhythm of ordinary life. The last song ends softly. The lyre is placed carefully back upon its hook. Children yawn. Parents smile. The room becomes quieter with every passing minute. Soon, only the gentle crackle of cooling wood remains. Beyond the windows, ancient Rome rests beneath a canopy of countless stars, while thousands of women, whose names history has long forgotten, quietly cherish these simple evening moments with family, friends, and neighbors. Their lives may never be written into great histories of emperors or famous battles, yet evenings like these shape the heart of Roman society. And as the lamp burns a little lower, the house grows calm. Night has fully arrived. Tomorrow will come with the first light of dawn. But for now, the world is peaceful, the stories have been told, the music has faded, and ancient Rome gently drifts toward sleep. And now, as our gentle journey through ancient Rome comes to its close, the city itself begins to grow wonderfully still. The last traces of daylight have long since disappeared beyond the western hills. Above the rooftops, countless stars shine with a quiet brilliance, just as they did nearly 2,000 years ago. The moon hangs over the temples, the tiled roofs, and the winding stone streets, bathing everything in a soft silver light. Inside homes across the empire, the day's work is finally over. The women we have quietly followed this evening have finished their countless tasks. The bread has been baked. The evening meal has been shared. The children have been washed, comforted, and tucked beneath warm woolen blankets. The oil lamps have been trimmed, their tiny flames dancing gently in the darkness. The spinning wheels have fallen silent. The cooking fires have burned low. The doors have been barred against the night. Only the occasional crackle of glowing embers remains. In a modest apartment high above the busy streets, one woman quietly checks on her sleeping children one final time. She gently pulls a blanket over a little shoulder before returning to her own small bed. Across the city, in a comfortable townhouse, another woman places a tiny offering before the household shrine. She whispers a short prayer for her family, for health, for peace, and for another ordinary tomorrow. Far beyond the crowded streets of Rome, in the peaceful countryside, a farmer's wife listens to the distant chorus of crickets while cool evening air drifts through an open window. Tomorrow will bring another long day of work, but for now the fields can rest, and so can she. In an elegant villa overlooking the sea, a noble woman gazes out toward the moonlit water. Even surrounded by wealth and beauty, her evening ends much like everyone else's, with quiet thoughts, tired hands, and hopes for those she loves. Despite their different lives, these women share something deeply familiar. They have worried about their families. They have prepared meals. They have cared for children. They have repaired clothing. They have comforted loved ones after difficult days. They have laughed at small jokes, sighed over unfinished work, and looked forward to tomorrow with quiet determination. History often remembers emperors, generals, senators, and victorious armies. Their names fill monuments in history books. But the Roman world could never have existed without the millions of ordinary women whose names were never carved into marble. It was they who kept the household fires burning. They baked the bread. They spun the wool that became clothing. They taught children their first words. They passed along traditions, recipes, songs, and stories from one generation to the next. They managed homes with remarkable skill. They found moments of joy amid endless responsibilities. Their lives were not filled with grand speeches or glorious battles. Instead, they were built from thousands of quiet evenings just like the one we have shared tonight. Simple evenings, peaceful evenings, ordinary evenings. And perhaps that is what makes them so extraordinary. Because even after 2,000 years, the rhythm of an evening remains surprisingly familiar. The sun still sets. Families still gather together. Meals are still shared. Parents still care for sleepy children. Lights still grow dim. Conversations become softer. The world gradually slows. The distance between ancient Rome and our own lives becomes just a little smaller. As you rest now, imagine the city one final time. The Forum stands empty beneath the stars. The marble temples glow softly in the moonlight. The fountains continue their gentle song. Somewhere, a dog barks once before settling into silence. A cool breeze drifts through narrow stone streets. An owl calls from a distant rooftop. One by one, the remaining oil lamps are gently extinguished. Darkness settles peacefully over the eternal city. The women of Rome are asleep now. Tomorrow, before the first light touches the rooftops, they will rise once again to begin another ordinary day filled with familiar work, quiet kindness, and unwavering strength. But for tonight, there is nothing left to do. Only rest. Only stillness. Only the comforting silence that blankets an ancient city beneath the stars. Thank you for spending this peaceful evening exploring the quieter side of history with me. If this journey through ancient Rome helped you relax, perhaps tomorrow night we'll wander through another forgotten corner of the ancient world together. Until then, let the streets of Rome fade gently into the distance. Let the last oil lamp flicker softly before going dark. Let the cool night air carry away every lingering thought. And may you drift into a deep, calm, and restful sleep. Good night.